Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
So, I'm a 23 female nanny. For the family I work for, there are 7 kids. Yes, 7. All ranging from 14 years old to 10 months old. I have been working for them for 8 months and never really had an issue. They are a good family for the most part, and key part here is the kids are all homeschooled, so they do not get out a lot. Unfortunately, that leads to mom and dad spoiling them quite a lot. And since I've started, I've had a bit of a discipline issue. They throw tantrums, throw things, and scream a lot. Finally, mom recently put on discipline because her tantrums led to me getting an injury. I was pushed down the stairs, so she implemented the timeout routine. And it was going well for almost everyone. And here's where the story truly begins. The second youngest is 2.5, almost 3. His tantrums are some of the worst, and instead of really disciplining him, she cuddles. If he screams and yells, she just picks him up and gives him whatever he wants. He will also throw things and hit whoever is telling him no. Mom doesn't do anything. On Wednesday this week, mom had an appointment, and when he woke up from his nap and she wasn't there, he freaked out. I tried to calm him down by playing games, food, or reading books, but nothing worked. He just got louder and more aggressive. He even hit me and his siblings. Eventually, he woke the baby, and when I got to her, he tried to even hurt her. So with no other real options working to calm him down, I picked him up, sat him on his bed, and said, "Time out. You don't have to behave this way. When you calm down, you can come out." He finally is calming down after several minutes, and mom comes home. She was quite upset that he got a timeout because she says that he is too young and doesn't know better. Now I understand he's young, but I've been a nanny for a while, and I have learned 2 to 3 is normal age for discipline, so they learn to know better. I only do a minute per year and only goes longer if they can calm down, though I check in every minute. She was also upset I used his room as a timeout. Now that part I get and can understand that at this age, associating timeout with where he sleeps, I can agree we don't do that. But I had to ask, when he's acting like this, what do you want me to do? She said, "Let me handle it. If I'm not there, give him what he wants. Not worth the fight." Okay, but what if it's something I can't give? She replied, "If you can't just let him go through it, he'll calm down quickly." I looked at her like, "Are you serious? You do realize how he can be, right?" But okay, cue malicious compliance. The next day, mom had another appointment and she was gone when he woke up. And of course, he wanted her and only her. I said, "Sorry, she's not here. Why don't we play a game?" He screams no. I ask if he wants a snack. No, he screams and starts slapping in my hands. I ask to go read a book or go to his siblings' room for playtime, but he screams again and hits me in the face. I told him, "Please don't hit me." So he screams in my face and goes off throwing things at me and everyone around and just goes off. I tell everyone to go to their rooms. I tried everything to calm him down, and it didn't work, so I did exactly what she told me. Absolutely nothing. He continues his tirade, throwing things, pulling things off shelves, and screaming. I obviously kept him from things that would hurt him like glass, ceramics, and when he got on a table to push something, I picked him up and put him down. Though he did bite me really hard when I did that. Not enough to bleed, but enough to leave a good mark. I let this go for about 15-ish minutes until mom came home. When she did, he was still freaking out. She just knows what is going on. I explained the situation and told her I am just doing what she said, then letting him cry it out till he calms down. She said that's not what I meant. I asked what did she want, and she didn't really have an answer. I told her I couldn't use discipline and I couldn't calm him. He said to let him go. He'd calm down and he hasn't yet. I made sure anything dangerous wasn't taken away, but I didn't know what else I could do. Now, respectively, I could have picked up what he threw around, but I wanted her to see what he was capable of. and I wasn't going to risk getting hurt again from taking things away. She looked upset, but didn't say anything and just looked at him, still throwing his tantrum. The baby wakes up and goes to get her. When she comes back to try and calm him, he screams to pick him up, and he hits her and keeps going till she puts the crying baby on the ground and picks him up. I was kinda shocked she fit into it. I told her he's old enough to know what he's doing. He knows that he will get what he wants when he does these things, and it's only going to get worse. And if it's going to continue, I'm going to continue to do nothing because I won't risk getting hurt or the other kids in the process. I showed her my bite mark and she went pale a bit and said he did that. And I said yes, he did that. She took a breath and said, "Why don't you go home for the day and I'll talk to Dad about this?" When I came to work this morning, there was a timeout chair for him, and I'm allowed to use it at my discretion. Edit. I only get paid $22 an hour and it's low. I'm quitting this job soon, or rather, I already did my last week in May. I promised I'd stay till then, and then I have a much better paying job backed up. And yes, I did get extra pay for the stairs incident, not the bite, but yes, for the stairs. It was a night that promised excitement, the kind you circle on your calendar month in advance. My friends and I have been looking forward to the concert for ages. The tickets a splurge we justified as a treat to ourselves for surviving another semester of college. The air buzzed with anticipation as we joined the sea of fans streaming into the venue, our spirits as high as the skyscrapers that framed the evening sky. As the opening act took the stage, the energy was infectious, with every note played echoing our own pulse. Between acts, we'd dart to the concession stand for overpriced snacks or to the restrooms to avoid missing any part of the main event. It was during one of these quick bathroom trips that my story took an unexpected turn. There I was, in the cramped stall, just about to head back, when I heard the click of a neighboring stall unlocking. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a woman. Let's call her Karen, for the sake of the story. Eyeing me strangely through the small gap in the stall door. I brushed off the odd feeling, attributing it to the general weirdness of public restrooms. As I washed my hands, I noticed Karen hovering a bit too close for comfort. My bag, momentarily left unguarded on a counter, seemed to draw her interest. Before I could process her intentions, she made a swift move for it. "Excuse me? What do you think you're doing?" I confronted her, my voice rising above the bathroom's ambient noise. "Oh, I thought this was my bag, dear. Easy mistake," Karen replied, her voice dripping with a condescension that did nothing to mask her lie. Clearly, it was no mistake. My bag was a unique patchwork design, a birthday gift from my sister, and not easily confused with the generic purses that populated most stores. "That's not going to fly. I saw you deliberately reach for my bag," I retorted, the disbelief and anger mounting with each word. Karen scoffed, her earlier fox politeness crumbling away. "Well, if you were more careful with your things, this wouldn't happen. You young people are so careless." The audacity of her words struck me. Not only was she attempting to steal from me, but now she was trying to blame me for her actions. The situation escalated quickly as voices raised, attracting the attention of others in the restroom. A couple of bystanders came over asking if everything was alright. Karen, sensing the tide turning against her, decided to play the victim. "This girl is accusing me of trying to steal her bag. Can you believe it? I was just trying to help," she exclaimed, looking for any shred of sympathy. One of the bystanders, a woman, probably in her late 20s, eyed Karen skeptically. "I saw the whole thing. You definitely went for her bag. Why don't we just wait for security to sort this out?" Karen's face blanched at the mention of security. It seemed the last thing she wanted was for this to escalate further, but it was too late. Someone had already alerted venue security, and within minutes a couple of officers were at the scene, asking for our versions of the story. The security team listened patiently, gathering statements from me, Karen, and the witnesses. It became clear to them and everyone else gathered that Karen had attempted to take something that wasn't hers. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with us," one of the officers said to Karen, his tone leaving no room for argument. "But I didn't do anything wrong. She's lying." Karen protested, her voice a mix of desperation and indignation. The evidence, however, was not in her favor. The witnesses corroborated my story, and the security footage from the hallway leading into the restrooms showed Karen eyeing me and following me in. They escorted Karen away while she's screaming. The concert, which had started as a carefree escape, had taken a detour into the surreal. My friends, having caught wind of the situation, rushed to my side, their concern quickly turning into outrage as I recounted the events. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The concert ended on a high note, the main act delivering a performance that momentarily swept away the evening's earlier drama. In the days that followed, I learned that Karen was charged with attempted theft. It turned out this wasn't her first attempt at such an act, but thanks to the quick actions of those around me, it would hopefully be her last for a while. As a flight attendant assigned to Karen's aisle, I was the one who bore the brunt of her entitled rage. From the moment she stepped onto the plane, she was demanding and disrespectful. "Excuse me, miss," she said, practically sneering at me as I greeted her at her seat. "I need extra pillows and blankets, and make sure they are the good ones, not the cheap ones." I tried to smile and be professional despite her rude tone. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we've run out of both. Is there anything else I can do for you?" Karen's eyes narrowed and her voice took on a menacing tone. "You can go and find some for me, or you will be sorry." I knew I had to handle the situation carefully. "I apologize, ma'am, but it's not possible for me to get more pillows and blankets. Is there anything else I can do to make your flight more comfortable?" Karen huffed and crossed her arms. "Fine, but I expect top-notch service from you. Do you understand?" "Well, yes, ma'am," I replied, trying to keep my cool. But Karen's demands only got worse as the flight went on. She tried yelling at other passengers and threatening to have them thrown off the plane if they didn't do as she said. She demanded drinks and snacks and became increasingly angry when I couldn't fulfill her requests. She even demanded that I switch seats for her, even though the plane was completely full. It wasn't until Karen started threatening to hijack the plane that I knew I had to take action. She leaned in close to me, her voice dripping with venom. "If you don't do exactly as I say, I'll hijack this plane. Do you understand me? You don't want me to pull out my gun. I'll do it, I swear." I was terrified, but I knew I had to stay calm and report this threat to the captain. I approached him discreetly and whispered what Karen had said. His face turned grave and he made the difficult decision to divert the flight and request assistance from law enforcement. He said, "We have to land the plane and have her removed," trying to remain calm despite the seriousness of the situation. Her behavior is completely unacceptable and she is putting the safety of everyone on this flight at risk. When we landed, FBI agents stormed onto the plane and arrested Karen, dragging her off in handcuffs. I watched as they read her rights and led her away, her protests and threats falling on deaf ears. As she was taken away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I had never encountered someone as entitled and abusive as Karen, and I hoped I never would again. I personally didn't know exactly what happened to Karen, but from the little knowledge I have regarding hijacking planes, I know that threatening to hijack a plane is a serious crime that can carry severe penalties. In the United States, the penalty for making a threat to hijack an aircraft is up to 20 years in prison, as well as fines and other penalties. This crime is covered under federal law, and the penalties can be even more severe if the threat is carried out or if anyone is injured as a result. It's important to note that making a threat to hijack an aircraft is taken very seriously by authorities and will be thoroughly investigated. Even if someone is joking or making a threat in jest, they can still face criminal charges. It's never acceptable to make threats of any kind on an aircraft or in any other public place, and it's important to remember that such threats can have serious consequences. For those of you who don't know about my old job from my I don't work here lady story, I got a job back when I was about 19 or 20 years old, close to 7 years or so ago, in my town's public hospital in their food service department. I stayed with the place for 3 years, but it has gone down as one of the worst jobs I ever had for many reasons. Witchy nursing staff, insane hours, overworking me and my co-workers, and just an overall very toxic work environment. I went in as a socially awkward girl with no spine for conflict or standing up for myself, and came out a much stronger person because of this place. However, there is a particular series of events that led to that transformation. Let me set it up for you. My official title was Food Service Aide, or Aide for short. My job was to collect dirty trays and dishes from carts, on their respective floors, wash all of the dishes that came into my dish room, and put them into the dish machine to be sanitized before letting the dishes dry and storing them where they needed to go. Then at the end of the night, I would break down the machine, clean the filters of leftover food, and drain the water tanks of dirty soup water before going home. Over time, I became well acquainted with the dish machines we had. First one was over 20 years old and finally died on us. Rest in peace, Big Bertha. And I could troubleshoot the problem with it, since I liked machines enough to learn as much as I could about them. My boss took notice of this and how hard I worked in the dish room every day, so he began to have me learn about the other part of the department so I could fill in whenever someone called in. Cooking on a grill and serving food in the cafeteria, cashiering, helping to prepare food trays for patients, learning about different diets and their orders from the doctors, restocking floors for patient snacks and drinks, and finally delivering food to patient rooms. If that seems like a lot for one person, well, it was. Due to staff cutbacks, we were short of manpower. So, a couple of us had to learn as much as possible to keep us afloat. Now, on to the story. I had already been working in this small hospital for just over a year at a time, and I was determined to stay at least a few years to help make my work history look pretty good in terms of longevity. That and pure stubbornness, I guess. In that time, my boss hired a new supervisor for our department who will now be called Chad. At first, Chad seemed like a pretty nice guy, and me, being the awkward dork I am, tried to help him fit in with the others at work. I told jokes to him, got him to open up a bit to the others, and soon he was able to have a conversation rather easily. Always good. Then he passed his 3 months probation period. I was no longer being constantly watched by my boss. Chad turned into an insufferable jerk. He began to bark orders as if he owned the kitchen, demanding to know why certain things weren't being done his way, and overall was slowing down production tremendously for everyone. Not to mention, he himself was a lazy jerk. There would normally be 2 people washing dishes. If one of them called in, it would mean whoever was there had to pick up the slack and do it all by themselves. Chad wouldn't lift a finger to help, unless he knew my boss was going to be in the kitchen and not in his office by HR. And even then, Chad didn't know what he was doing, and to top it all off, he made it a point to take jabs at me in front of the others, trying to make me look stupid because I was the youngest member of the department. It felt like I had gone back to high school, being the quiet nerdy girl who was picked on for liking things out of the norm and being laughed at for being weird. I like to draw, love anime, and play video games. So when the topic of what are you going to do on your days off came up, I usually say something like, I'm going to relax at home and play certain game after doing some chores. Then Chad would make a remark like, wow, you play video games? You must not have a life. Ah, jerk. It got to the point where I was so fed up with Chad's nonsense that I began to grow a bit of a backbone. I was fed up with constantly having anxiety working with him and hiding in the bathroom, stopping during my shift when he was making my life a living hell. I began to make cracks back at him and got into yelling matches with him in the kitchen. No sound escaped the doors once they were closed, so no one outside the department heard us. He couldn't fire me, only tell my boss and sign a write-up, which he never did because he saw it a way of losing to me in our arguments. Anytime he made jokes at me, I threw them back right at him. And when I knew he was doing something wrong, I would fight back and tell him how it was supposed to be done. This went on for a few months and then the final straw. As a dishwasher, you're supposed to take temperatures in a dish machine to ensure it's working properly. It's supposed to reach a certain temperature when washing dishes to ensure everything is being sanitized properly. If not, there could be an outbreak in the hospital from germs or mold. All the temperatures and times were recorded on a sheet and placed in a folder in the dietitian's office by the dish room. I was making my usual rounds of ticking temps when I noticed the machine was reading about 20 degrees cooler than where it was supposed to be. I shut down the machine and began to drain the water tanks. This was my way of troubleshooting if the tanks had just not been drained in a while or if something was seriously wrong with the machine. As I was draining the water, Chad comes in and sees me doing this, and he was furious and began to rant. "What are you doing? We still have piles of dishes to wash." Temperatures were low. Gotta drain the water and see if that fixes it. I think, how the hell is that going to fix it? You're just wasting time. Me, visibly annoyed. If you'd let me finish, I'm seeing if the morning shift drained the water or not. If not, then it will only take 10 minutes to fill the tanks back up. I know the tanks were drained. I drained them myself. I got up and looked him in the eye, knowing he was lying since he always asked me to take care of the machine at closing. Prove it. Show me how. He was about to yell again when my co-worker Dean in the diet office peers into the dish room. Chad's face turns red and he gives me a death glare before storming off. I continued to work on the machine, and once the tanks refilled, I initialized all of my attempts and times on a sheet before returning it back to the office. The day went by, and after a hellish time on the floor serving patients, I was in the middle of my cleaning duties with the cook and Dean. I got called by Chad saying that my boss wanted to talk to us. So after making sure the dish machine was cleaned, I walked with him to my boss's office. There, my boss begins to tell me that Chad had given him evidence that I was slacking on my duties and that I was not taking temperatures like I was supposed to for the dish machine. He said that thankfully Chad took the temps, but if I wanted to keep from getting into trouble and to keep the department from getting into legal trouble, I needed to step up and be a team player. He said that I was getting a verbal warning, and if I did this again, I would receive a write-up or possible suspension. My jaw hit the floor. And even though Chad is smiling smugly in the corner, I chose not to argue with my boss and head back to the department, defeated and fighting back tears. I was sure that I took the temps, and when I checked the book, I was shocked to see what I found. My temps were still in there, and the times I took them. But the jerk actually photocopied the page, whited out my initials, and replaced them with his initials. He then traced over the pre-existing handwriting to make it look legit, with his initials. He made it look like I had not taken temps all day during my shift. I racked my brain wondering how the hell he could have gotten away with it with no one noticing him. And then it hit me. He must have done it in the diet office when no one was around due to dinner trays being made under the dietitian's supervision. I was pissed, and I began to bide my time for an opportunity for revenge. It came about a month later. Now, since we are a hospital in a small town, it was normal for us to get catering orders for the members of HR and upper management when they had meetings upstairs. Those orders were easy because usually they wanted chips, pre-made sandwiches, and soda for about 10 to 15 people. However, we occasionally got huge catering orders for district meetings, and that was when we would bust out the catering dishes. Large white immaculate plates, silverware, glass cups, punch bowls, food serving plates, desserts, tea, and cloth napkins were usually used for these events. And even though there were a lot more dishes for the understaffed aides, it was pretty simple. This particular order was for the CEO, his workers, HR, doctors, head nurses, and the higher-ups who owned the hospital's contract. The estimated amount to be served was about 150 people since many members of the board were going to show up as well. Usually we got the huge orders a week in advance, so the supervisor could arrange the schedule to have more bodies on deck to help. Chad of course schedules only me to be the afternoon dishwasher, meaning I had to clean the dishes for the entire hospital and the catering order. This was my chance for revenge. As always, Chad didn't lift a finger to help me in the dish room, and the entire room was completely full of dirty dish cards from the floors. The hospital had about 95 patients that were eating, and the morning shift had been running behind, so I had both breakfast and lunch dishes to clean. It wouldn't have been so bad if we didn't have to take apart the trays one by one to make sure no needles or blood were on the trays, and clean each piece. I was stressed beyond belief because I knew that the 150 people catering order would be due any time now. But I kept myself calm and tried to keep doing my job. A few hours go by and Chad calls out to me to shut off the dish machine. It was very loud and tells me to go and pick up the catering order. Instead of arguing with him, I decided to do it and asked if he was going to help me. He gives me a big grin and tells me, I have better things to do. You can do it alone. Perfect. So despite me being exhausted, sweaty, and having a wet uniform from my dishwasher apron with holes in it, I made my way to the management floor and I scooped out the damage. And I realized I'm going to have to make 2 or more trips across the hospital to clean this up. I began to pick up the dishes in the meeting room, take off the tablecloth, and stack them on 1 or 2 long carts. While I'm about to clean up the food serving table, I looked over to see that the door that led into the HR office was open slightly, and a few women were laughing and commenting on how good the pork roast was at the meeting. I knew they were within earshot of me. It was showtime. In this moment, I was thankful for being clumsy and having sprained my ankles so much growing up, because it was easy to do this. While I was cleaning up, I deliberately tripped on a chair that was left slightly out and went crashing onto the floor. I sprained my ankle doing this, which was what I was planning actually, and the glassware I was carrying fell and crashed to the floor. The 2 women in HR heard this and rushed over to see me lying on the floor with shattered glass all around me and a few minor cuts on my arms, and they rushed over to help me up. We will call them Jane and Jill. Jill says, Are you okay? I'm alright, I say on the brink of tears. Are you sure? Here, let's get you into a chair. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please don't tell my boss. They helped me up into a chair, and when they checked me over to see I'm in tears, they began to ask questions. Where is your help? It's just me right now. I'm supposed to pick this up and take it back to wash them. Seriously? All by yourself? Why didn't you get someone to help you? We're short a dishwasher today. I'm trying as best as I can, but I keep falling more and more behind. At this point, I began to cry uncontrollably. All the stress and emotions I had bottled up from the past few months from working with Chad and the department had finally built up so much, I let loose my repressed emotions on these 2 ladies. I told them about the understaffing, the insane amount of overtime I and my coworkers were getting, how I was the only one doing dishes that day, how my supervisor refused to help me, and how much stress I had been in. I wasn't faking any of it. I was just waiting for the right moment to finally break down and tell the right people about all of the negative feelings I had. Needless to say, the 2 were shocked at my breakdown. Once I calmed down, they told me they wanted to see just how bad things had gotten in the dish room. If it was as bad as I said it was, they would make a case with my boss. So with their help, they helped me get back to the dish room with a cart of dirty dishes, and I held on to the cart while limping down the hall. Once we got to the staff door for my department's dish room, I told them to wait outside while I pushed the carts in. Confused, they comply and hug the wall, waiting to see what happened next. I slipped into the dish room with the carts like nothing happened, and Chad came in and glared at me. At this point, the room was completely full of dishes, carts, and now 2 catering carts that took up a large amount of space. You could barely walk through the damn place. We then began our normal yelling match, all while the door was left slightly open behind me. Chad says, About time you came back. What took you so long? I was picking up an order by myself. What did you expect, Chad? I was expecting you to do your job. Clearly you can't. Look at all these trays. I just picked up and began to work on lunch when you told me to get the catering. Did you do any of these while I was gone? Gesturing to the room. No, I had my own work to do. You're just too slow. How the hell am I supposed to wash dishes when I'm picking up the catering order? Not my problem. Do your job or you'll get a write-up. With that, he leaves and I go back to meet with Jane and Jill. Her faces are filled with anger and disgust from what they just listened to, and they reassure me that this was going to stop. Now we walked together back to the management floor, and as I limped into my boss's office behind them, the 2 ladies began to go off on him about Chad and what he had been doing. My boss had no idea what they were talking about and looked to me for an explanation. However, Jill and Jane told him to follow us, and we walked back to the department. At this point, my ankle was throbbing with intense pain since I sprained it pretty good. When we got to the dish room and opened the door, my boss was appalled at the amount of work that was left for me. When he heard that there was no second or even third backup dishwasher scheduled, he almost lost it. He called for Chad, and the four of us waited in a dietitian's office. While we waited, I told him I didn't want him to lose his job over this, but I wanted him to know how I felt being left with so much work. I really felt this way, but a huge part of me just wanted to see him suffer. When Chad walked in to see me and three powerful people with me, his face turned pale. But his normal trash-talking face was replaced with one of fake concern and confusion. Though his act failed as my boss began to demand why he didn't schedule someone to help me. He told my boss he had been helping me as much as he could today, but Jin and Jill stopped him and repeated what he told me before. My boss is disgusted and he looks to Chad after discussing the situation more. This is what's going to happen. My boss says, OP hurt herself cleaning up the catering, and she's going home for the day and will be off for 2 days. Chad says, she can't go home. We're short-staffed. That was your fault, not hers. She's not going to suffer because you screwed up. But also, I don't care how much overtime this accrues. You're staying after. What for? Tonight, you're going to be the dishwasher, all by yourself. You're going to wash every single one of those dishes and the catering order. And since it's almost time for dinner to be served to patients, I guess you will be doing those too. If you leave anything for the morning crew to clean up, and if the department isn't cleaned as it's supposed to, consider yourself fired. Once he said that, I was sent home for the day, and the three continued to tear Chad a new one as I limped out of the door. When I got back to my car, I was smiling so much that my cheeks were hurting all the way back to my house. The epilogue. After I got back from my 2-day break, I noticed that there were empty slots open on a schedule that said, new hire, but no hours. It seems that after the talk, HR decided to grant us new hire slots to help with our understaffing, but the slots were still empty. I also found out something that was just icing on my beautiful revenge cake. I found out from Dean that Chad had to stay until about midnight cleaning the entire load of dishes that he let pile up on me. And the next day, he even helped the one person he scheduled for morning dishes to clean up the breakfast since he scheduled himself to work the morning shift. But the cherry on top was that when there were large catering orders, Chad had to sit up and then clean up the orders from then on since he was convinced it could all be done by one person. So when he was cleaning a large catering order by himself in the dish room, and I walked by to get ready to serve dinner to the patient rooms, he stopped me. He then asked me if I minded staying back and helped him since there was so much of the catering order left to clean up. I smiled and said simply, not my problem. Do your job. Boom. Common questions. 1. To those asking why I didn't report him for the falsified temps, he took the original page, he whited out my initials and probably destroyed it later, leaving the photocopy page. He effectively destroyed my proof even though I tried to fight back, so I couldn't bring him down. I also didn't really know my rights back then since I was about 20 at the time. 2. For those who are worried if the hospital is the same way, the nursing staff was changed to make way for more compassionate nurses, and many members of my old department either quit, retired, or were fired. 3. Chad only stayed for maybe 8 weeks at most after this, before he moved back to his old town and old job. 4. The food service department was taken over by another contracted company who, from what I hear, is much more compassionate and has a lot more staff members to help. My friends who are still working there told me that it's much better and a happier place to be at. 5. At first, I was not planning to cry to Jane and Jill. My original plan was to get hurt, be very angry, and threaten to walk out. However, when they were so nice to me and showed they really cared about what happened to me, I couldn't hold back anymore, and I broke down. I'm a very emotional person and cry at the drop of a hat due to living in a highly abusive environment growing up. When I left the hospital, I was much more mature and hardened.